Welcome to this episode of Entertainment Fanatics. I'm your host, Doan Nguyen. On this episode, I interview Paul Skidmore, an independent filmmaker who shares his experience working outside the traditional entertainment hubs. He also talks about how his faith has supported him throughout his career and much more. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, Mr. Skidmore. It's a pleasure to have you on my podcast today. So, first question. I understand that in 2002, you earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Producing from the University of North Carolina School of Arts. What inspired you to pursue this field?
Well, I was born in 1978. So when I was, 5 or 6 years old and was first watching movies in, 1984, around there, the movies were, Return of the Jedi and the Superman franchise and Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and the Goonies and Gremlins, all these fun sort of action adventure optimistic, just fun movies. And as a kid, I kind of wanted to live in those worlds and have that kind of fun. But as I got older and realized, those worlds don't really exist, I realized that I could make things like that, that I could, people make movies, so why can't I do that? And we had a home video camera when I was little. My brother showed me how to use it. And so that began my lifelong relationship with the camera and filming things. The things that I filmed as a kid are terrible and unwatchable, and you wouldn't want to look at them. But that led to I actually did music education at University of Memphis for 2 years before I went to film school, and that was due primarily to a really influential teacher that I had that was my band teacher. And I enjoyed music education, but I realized something that I really enjoyed about music was the emotional expression and that sort of thing. And I also directed a little drama troupe at the Christian Student Center while I was in college. And I found that I really liked directing and directing actors, and I had a friend that encouraged me in that as well. And so after 2 years of music ed, I wasn't real happy there, and I thought, I've always wanted to make movies. People make movies. I can do that. I should just do that. So I went to North Carolina School of the Arts, as you said, and they taught us there how to do everything in the process, from setting up C-stands to doing budgets to working with actors, sort of the whole gamut. And you do everything. Your first 2 years, you do everything, and then you pick a concentration. And I chose producing because even at that time, I knew that I didn't want to go, as much as I loved Hollywood and grew up on Hollywood, I didn't want to go and move out to Hollywood and do the Hollywood thing, that I wanted to do my own thing here in Tennessee. And so I chose the producing program so that I would know how to put something together. And so I've been in Tennessee ever since graduation.
Is there a way we can Is there a way we can find your first film?
My first film, well, I hope not. Uh, the School of the Arts has, a record of the films and things that we made there. And actually, my first 5 minutes at the end of my freshman year turned out pretty well. I had planned it out. It was kind of a stupid story, and it was not an original story at all. But it turned out funny, and the project turned out how I wanted. It was nothing spectacular. And I have to say, because it turned out kind of how I wanted, I didn't learn as much from it. I gained some confidence in myself, which was needed, but I didn't learn a whole lot. My second year and third year, things maybe didn't turn out exactly how I wanted, and it was in those years that I really learned a lot, because you can really only learn by failing and making mistakes. And school and just out of school is the best time to do that because the stakes are low. You're not risking other people's money and all that kind of stuff. So you can go to parabolos.com. That's parabolos.com. And you'll see two short films that I've done recently. And then I've got my first feature film, which I'm working on finishing right now. Will hopefully be out later this year. And you can see the trailer for that there as well. You can also go to fivecoffeesinabook.com and see the trailer. And there you can get a free copy of the ebook that the movie is based on. And there's even a little discussion guide if you'd like to read the book and talk about it with a friend.
Who are your creative inspirations?
I think probably more than anybody, just from the films growing up, is probably Robert Zemeckis. I loved Spielberg, I love Star Wars and all that stuff, but a lot of Zemeckis's movies really stayed with me, and I liked how he always pushed new technologies in everything that he did. Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Contact, Castaway is one of my favorite films of all time, and so and I love how open he was about the process and the business, and especially the technology. I remember when Forrest Gump was made, there were lots of behind the scenes about how they, spliced Forrest into all of these, all this historical footage and such. And I really became enamored with all that behind the scenes stuff. That was the stuff that really made me want to be a filmmaker, is seeing how the sausage is made, I remember even Return of the Jedi came out in '83, and around that time on HBO, there was like a 1 hour making of that showed how they made all the models and how they did all the blue screen stuff. And um, I really wanted to make movies after seeing all that. I just thought that was really fascinating. So Robert Zemeckis was a big one. More recently, I like a lot of David Fincher's work. I like a lot of Christopher Nolan's work. And I'm just trying to find my own voice being inspired by these enormously great directors.
Okay. What has your experience been like an independent filmmaker?
My experience as an independent filmmaker has been a tough one, but I think it's tough any way that you do it. So I kind of wanted to do this anyway before I went to film school, but coming up on the end of film school, you have weighing on you. What are you going to do now, and how are you going to go out there in the industry and make money or use what you've learned? And I kind of felt like, okay, I could go out to Los Angeles, Hollywood. I could do well out there, and 15, 20 years, I could be directing my own feature film. But if I do that, the money's going to be raised probably in a studio system or whoever my contacts are there. It's going to be owned by those people. It's going to be people in the industry, so they're going to want a lot of input into how the thing is made or what the stories, how the story is told. And so that will be hard working my way up that way. It'll also be hard to stay in Tennessee and work towards being able to make something on my own here. That will also be hard. But at the end of that hard process in 15, 20 years, I can make my own feature film, which I've written and directed. And if I raise money for it, then it'll be from people that aren't in the business and aren't interested in telling me how to shoot things and don't necessarily know storytelling and aren't interested in telling me how to tell my story. And so I thought, if either way is hard. If I go to Los Angeles, that's hard. If I stay here, that's hard. But if I stay here and do this hard thing, I can be close to my family. I can be in sort of an atmosphere that I'm familiar and comfortable with. And when I get to that place, the thing that I make will basically be mine. It'll be something that I own and won't have other people looking over my shoulder telling me what to do. And so it's been tough. And it can be lonely sometimes because obviously not everyone where I live is into movies. As like when you're in Los Angeles, that's everyone is talking about it. Even people that don't have anything to do with the industry, they know that they're there because the industry exists in that town. So it can be lonely. It can be discouraging. But I just have to keep sort of that vision in front of me of what I'm after, and that's the thing that keeps me moving ahead.
I think you kind of explained about this, but can you explain what it's like to create films in a place that isn't traditionally associated with the entertainment industry, such as Tennessee, compared to cities like Los Angeles, Atlanta, or New York?
Yeah, sure. So when we were in film school in North Carolina, it was a town called Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And, there was not a lot of film production in Winston-Salem. North Carolina did a lot of film production. Most of it was out in Wilmington, and which is like off in the coast. Winston-Salem's in the sort of in the middle of the state. And so what you would find was it's kind of halfway in between Los Angeles and like where I live. It's like where I live, if you say you want to shoot a movie somewhere, people are like, oh, they're kind of very interested in that and they want to help and that sort of thing. If you go to Los Angeles, you say, hey, I want to shoot a movie, and they're like $500,000, please. Right away they know, they have a sense of the value of like what their location is going to be or whatever. And so North Carolina was kind of like halfway in between that because the film school had been there for so long, even though it was a smaller school. A lot of the really cool locations had been filmed in before, meaning things had been broken before, people had overstayed their welcome before, people had left the place trashy before, or whatever. And so there were already some burnt relationships by the time we became students and wanting to film places. People were like, no, we're not doing that anymore. And so, anyway, where I am now, we haven't gotten to that place yet. So it's a little easier to kind of scoot in and film some things and scoot out. Things don't really cost a lot. I think location wise on my feature film, I don't remember how many locations we had, but it's probably somewhere in the order of 10 or 12. I think I only paid money really for three of them. One of those was really, I didn't really pay for the location, but I had to pay for, it was an intersection, so I had to pay for a police officer. Maybe I paid a $5 permit or something, but it was, another one was a state park, which I did not pay for, but they requested a donation. So, we made a donation to that. And then there was only one like private shop that we actually paid some money for. But we shot an entire day there on one of the days that they are normally closed, and they opened up and fixed food for us, and so it was worth it to do that. Um, but so some things can be easier like that. The things that are more difficult is there's not the breadth of crew, there's not the breadth of cast. I have friends that live in Los Angeles that can make some independent stuff on their off time on their weekends or whatever. But their day jobs might be doing motion graphics for Fox. So they have some expendable income, and so when they have a day off and they've got their own red package, they can run off with their other friends who have their day off, and they can make something of value, or they can put $5,000 or $10,000 of their own money into something. And here are people that are interested in film production or trying to do that for a living. There's not as much work, they're not making as much money, and so there's not really as much freedom. But at the same time, they're more passionate, I think, because they're not jaded by the business and they're not doing it every day. They enjoy it every chance that they get. And so, like on our production, it was a very small production. We had a crew of three most days. The most amount of crew that we ever had at one time was five people, including me. And it's the smallest crew I've ever worked on, even in film school. I mean, even our first year of projects, we had five people. So it was really interesting to work, that small. But the three of us that were working were really bought into the project, and that made every day's work just I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I don't really want to do it that way ever again. I'd like to have 30 or 50 people next time. But working just out of our passion like that was really great. And so you can find those people, and if you know if God wills it, if everything aligns, then yeah, you can make some really fantastic stuff.
You describe yourself as a believer, follower, and filmmaker. Can you elaborate on what that means to you?
Sure, I'd love to. I grew up in the South. Most of us grew up going to church, and that's something that's part of me, my faith. And as it pertains to filmmaking, my worldview, so my faith is kind of tied to my worldview, which includes God and Scripture, and my worldview. Filmmaking is so tied to my worldview. Sometimes I have a hard time understanding why people who don't believe in God even want to make movies. Because for me, the thing that I love about movies is that they are redemptive. I mean, look at basic three-act structure is you have your hero character in the beginning, their world is turned upside down, and they spend the rest of the story trying to find some way to right it. And in the end, things may not be fixed, but they're probably better, unless it's a tragedy or something like that, which again is a warning against not seeking redemption or not finding it. And so stories are so redemptive, and When I look at particularly like the New Testament texts, when Jesus would go out into public, the number one thing that he would do is tell stories. He would tell these parables, and he wouldn't always explain them. He would leave it for the audience that he was speaking to figure it out. And if they wanted to know more, then they would come forward and find more. And so when I'm approaching my writing or my filmmaking, I see it as sort of, modern day parables. And I take a lot of inspiration, not just from the parables of the Bible, but from writers like Flannery O'Connor and even Cormac McCarthy, who's inspired by a Southern, Christian culture. And you see, these fantastic writers telling these sometimes really dark and graphic and violent parables. Some of the New Testament parables are very violent, and they're startling and they're provocative. But when they're over, you're left with this sense that something is not right in the world. And now that the story is over, the only way that I can write it is to go and write it myself in my own life. And that's what I hope to inspire in people with my stories and my films.
I I have I have a I have a production assistant opportunity coming soon. As a producer, what quality would you like to see in a production assistant?
Oh, what qualities would I like to see in a production assistant? That is a great question. Um, the the biggest one is proactivity. That's the first one that comes to mind anyway. So I've been on both sides of this. So I remember them telling us this basically our first year of film school. Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Look around for things to do and do it. Right. And so we really took that to heart. And so I remember I was first or second year and I was on production. We were shooting outside at a barn, and every time they would yell cut, I would go up and get as close as I could to the director and the DP and the AD. I was just a grip, I think, on the show, but I would just go and I would just listen because they would be talking through what they were gonna do next, the instructions they were about to give. And so I remember this one shot in particular. We had this really tall light that was shining on the front of the barn, and I crept up there and I heard him say, well, first thing we need to do is we need to pan this light off because we need to get this light off the barn. We're going to push them for this close up. And they talked about some other things. And while they were still talking, I just turned around, turned the light away from the barn, and then went back. And so when they went to give the instructions and they saw that was already done, they were just so pleased that someone was on top of that. And I've been on the other side of that too, where I've had all these things that I wanted to do. And I've turned around and said, okay, the next thing we're going to do is this. And then I saw people had already laid out the things ready for that next shot. They had looked ahead on the shot list and gotten things ready, and there was already a mark for the actor outside or whatever. And the way that that felt, knowing that other people were doing some thinking for me, so for a production assistant, that's the when people say like motivated or tenacity or something like that, what they're really talking about is this sort of observational proactivity, the ability to look around and find what needs to be done and to either just do it or to at least suggest, hey, is this something that I can do? Is this something that you want me to work on? Rather than just sitting around and waiting to be told. That quality alone will get you so far with individuals and it'll get you so far in the industry.
And finally, what platform will the darkness roll over her be available on?
So The Darkness Rolled Over Her is my feature film, and it's about Gwen who has decided to take her own life, and she goes on a fly fishing retreat, meets this old fly fisherman named Roy, and her conversation with Roy starts to kind of challenge that decision that she's made. Again, you can watch the trailer for that at fivecoffeesinabook.com. You can get the ebook of that there as well as a discussion guide. And as far as distribution for the film, we got to get it finished first. So we're still working on that.
Yep.
But my plan for that is still forming. But before doing a traditional release structure, I think we're going to do some more event-based things. And so that's still under work. So I think in the beginning it will be something where you'll have to be essentially invited to the event to be able to find it. After that, we will do more traditional release. I've got the edit that I'm doing now is I'm preparing for theater so that we can at least have a premiere event for the cast and crew and that. So any theaters that want to run it, we're gonna try that route. And then long after that, it'll be available in the traditional places, Apple, Amazon, and eventually streaming, that sort of thing. But it's very hard to make the most money that you can as an independent because especially everybody wants to stream and there's not a lot of money in streaming. So you've got to get real creative with the distribution strategies for a lot of reasons.
Is there any new is there any new you learned from this project compared to others?
Is there anything new I learned from this project compared to others that I've worked on? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Um, so when my buddy Noah has been my right hand through all of this, and I could not have done it without him. Um, I did pretty much every major role of the film. I wrote it, directed it, produced it, shot it, edited it, sound design, doing the color correction. And Noah has been helping me every step of the way. He's doing a lot of the visual effects and helped me with the sound work and was there every day on set. But I brought him over back in 2020, August 17th of 2020, and I had this short story, and I thought it'd be pretty easy to turn into a film if I had the right people or we could had the right locations and stuff. And I said to him, I don't know, I think we can make a movie of this. And he said, I know we can. And that was August 17th, 2020. We literally left that afternoon to go location scouting. And then September 16th of 2020, so 29 days later, was our first day of production. So we did complete pre-production on a feature film in 29 days. Absolutely insane. Post-production has taken 5 years. We're still, it's been a very slow process. So I have learned so much about every step of the process. I've learned a lot about myself, what I'm capable of. I've learned about working with other people. I've learned about my strengths and weaknesses. I've learned a ton about storytelling. Every time I do a podcast like this and have to defend, the choices that I've made, I learn which of those choices were good and which ones maybe weren't so great. Um, every time I do this, I see sort of the path that I've been set on since I was a kid or since film school or whatever, and that gives me a little more encouragement that I'm headed in the right direction, even though I don't have a whole lot in my hands maybe right now. And so, yeah, I learned a ton of things. Um, I've learned some hard lessons. I mean, I think for creators, we think the people closest to us are going to be really supportive of us, and sometimes the people closest to us are not the ones that are most supportive. I have found some really supportive people in the most random places. A German kid on Twitch watching me sound design has become a huge fan, A 15, 16-year-old kid at a book, at an art fair where I had my books, came up and started looking at my books. I just want to go, kid, it's nothing explodes in these books. Like you're not going to be interested in any of this. He bought every single one of them and then proceeded to email me, for months and was like, I'm a writer too. And would you read this? And I started a magazine at my school. And then he did an interview with me. And then when he posted the interview, he called me his mentor. I was like, I've just been answering emails. I don't know about mentorship. But it's like you find the support in the most unlikely places. And that gives me a lot of hope because if the only people who are going to support you are the people closest to you, how many people would that be? 5, 20, maybe 100? But if the people who are going to support you, you haven't even met yet, there's nearly 8 billion of those people. And you only need like a fraction of a percent to make a living off of this, much less change the world. So while that is a hard lesson to learn kind of on the front end, on the back end of it, it's really encouraging and really inspiring.
Last question. What advice do you have for people navigating the industry today?
Filmmaking is all about decisions. So I'm called a director because I'm providing the direction. Less of this, more of that. Not that dress, this dress, not this color, that color, you know. And so you're providing this direction, and I can really only do that if I have a very clear vision of what the story is, right? And so when I see what the story is, then it makes it very easy for me to decide, no, 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 not that dress. This dress doesn't help tell the story. That dress helps tell the story. No, not that color. That color works against our story, but this color works for our story. So likewise in your business as a filmmaker, it's the same. It's decision making, and you can't make decisions if you don't have a clear vision. And so I think that's one of the most important things to do is to decide, who you're going to be and what is it going to take for you to be that person. One popular, recommendation from all these gurus out there is to write your own eulogy. Write what you would want said about you at your funeral. Okay, this is what I hope is said about me at my funeral. Now I'm going to live in such a way that those things are true. When you start to put that down on paper, things become really clear. And when I did that exercise several years ago, there were things that, without even thinking about it, were not in the eulogy that I was spending a lot of time on in my life. And I just thought, well, I need to spend less time on that somehow because that's clearly not something that I care about, or clearly not something that I want to take with me, all the way to the end of my life. And so that can be a really focusing exercise to decide, who am I going to be? And then the trick, though, then is to do the day-to-day work. That's the hard part, is to do the day-to-day work on the way to becoming that person. And someone, I read a quote recently, I think maybe it was Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or somebody, but he said that, a man that has to make a journey of 100,000 miles, all he can do is travel 25 miles and then lay down to rest and get up and tomorrow and do it again. And so that's the key, is to have that vision that is helping you in even your day-to-day decision making, certainly with the big decisions, and then just every day living in the present and taking each day as it comes and making the decisions for that day with that vision always in mind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. Great questions.
Yeah. If you're enjoying the podcast, do me a favor and tell a friend who might like it too. That one share really helped me grow the show. Catch you next time.